Good afternoon and welcome to our regularly scheduled meeting of the Finance, Audit and Budget Committee of DeKalb County. I'm Commissioner Jeff Rader, and I appreciate everyone being here today. I am currently joined by Commissioner Lorraine Cochran-Johnson, and I see Commissioner Larry Johnson here. Thank you all for coming back after being engaged in the previous PEX committee meeting right away. So at this point, let's go to the meeting minutes for our specially called meeting of May 26th. Commissioner Johnson, have you had a chance to take a look?
Yes, sir.
I would entertain a motion if you're ready.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes for May 26.
And I'll second that motion. I believe Commissioner Cochran-Johnson couldn't attend that meeting, so I will stand in for her to make the second. All in favor, please raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. If there are any abstentions, Commissioner Cochran-Johnson, please.
I will, because I was not present, so I am an abstention on that vote.
Thank you very much. We have an agenda item and an important SPLOST expenditure on security for the DeKalb County Courthouse. Who is going to make a presentation on that? I see Ms.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Good afternoon, Commissioner Rader. This is LeNora Hawkins Ponzo. I am the court administrator. I will be brief. I can tell you that we have been working with the SPLOST team for the last 5 months to do some security enhancements on behalf of the Sheriff's Office. I wanted to let you all know that these are all law enforcement contracts. I am just the person that is over the purview of the courthouse. The sheriff remains over the courthouse security. And collectively, we have been working with the SPLOST team. They have vetted these items and they are needed in our courthouse in order for us to remain safe. I don't know what additional information you may need. I'm willing to answer any questions that you may have.
Just a little bit more of the nature of the improvements that are being proposed.
These are improvements to the security camera systems, to some of the elevator camera systems, upgrades to the Sheriff's Office information system servers to maintain some of the video from our camera systems, along with enhancing the lighting in the secured parking areas throughout the parking deck where the judges and other elected officials park. Things of that nature. There are about 5 separate contracts that the sheriff has in place right now. We vetted some enhancements to those contracts in order for them to provide the necessary updates and installation fees. The SPLOST team reviewed all of the contracts. They will be signed by the sheriff herself. And it is all surrounding the enhancement to the courthouse security.
Okay, and Mr. Kingsbury, since this is a SPLOST project, do you have anything to add?
Thanks, Ms. Ponzo and Commissioner Rader. These projects were in Clyde Stovall's original list when SPLOST was created. They were a companion to the major renovation at the parking deck, but there was a line item for security upgrades as a capital improvement.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have questions? Seeing none, if there are no further questions, this I think is a appropriation and not yet a contract. So commissioners, do I have a motion?
I would, okay. And I'll second.
So the motion is to recommend approval of this this allocation from the SPLOST funds, seconded by Commissioner Cochran-Johnson. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your hand, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. The recommendation is to approve. Let's talk a little bit more today on the American Rescue Plan reporting framework. I talked a little bit to Mr. Williams about what we were trying to get at there. And many of you saw today a effort by the administration to provide more detailed information on the progress of projects that has been authorized out of your district funds. In addition to that, we're interested also in tracking the commitments, intermediate commitments on the larger body of the funds. And so, Mr. Williams, if you will begin that discussion and sort of give us a little bit of a approach, and perhaps Ms. McNabb can help us to understand how we can better identify commitments that have not yet perhaps hit the financial books.
Sure.
So that we can better understand resources that remain in this tranche. And then obviously we'll also be looking at accepting the 2022 tranche.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would like to start with Ms. McNabb, if you can go on and bring up the document, the ARP updated chart. But at the outset, Commissioner Rader, what I want to do is thank the team who have worked tirelessly for months, quite frankly, but over the past 30 days or so, I think we have kind of recalibrated and decided to do something differently in order to get these funds into the hands of these organizations much more quickly. So whether it's the team in finance under Ms. McNabb with Wayne Williams and Deborah Sherman and those and Belinda and so many others, or in purchasing with Catherine and Crystal and the whole team, or of course the attorney's office, many of whom are actually sitting in the room. And Nicole Agner has done a woman's job, as well as Terry and everyone else. So with that, you see the results of what has transpired over the last 30 days or so is a lot of the spending that commissioners had sought, and a lot of those allocations have been moved forward. That was done in large part because we kind of switched gears, and as opposed to the extensive process that we had been doing, a lot of it is risk-based, quite frankly. We have reinitiated a process that allows us essentially to issue POs for those allocations where it's pretty straightforward. When the allocation made by the commissioner describes one of these specifically enumerated categories in the ARP grant, we're simply moving those forward. And I think that's helped quite a bit, and I would anticipate in future ARP allocations doing something similar. So that is a lesson that we have learned, and thanks to everyone involved in helping us make that shift. So what you have before you now in terms of this balance as of June 6th is the list of activities and categories where we have been spending funds and addressing various needs as articulated by each of the project names. What we would draw your attention to is there's a number of them, and Ms. McNabb can kind of touch base on some of those that are have less expenditures than others. And in the future, we will be able to go through and really articulate why that is. That had been the case with many of the district allocations. That is, rapidly changing, and I think it will change by the day. But we have found something that we did not anticipate this time last year, and some of the programs where staffing are being hired, that because of the difficulty in hiring personnel, those programs are moving more slowly than we wish. And particularly, I think you'll see that as the case in some of the court programs. Additionally, there are some programs, I'm looking at Care and Conserve, that have simply taken time to get developed, because understand when we made these allocations, a lot of these programs were simply concept. And we are now at the point with Care and Conserve in particular, where we will be signing the contract with the Nehemiah project, which was voted on by the board about 30 days ago. And, subsequent to that, it's the contract negotiation and ensuring that we're clearly articulating what we are paying for. So the stormwater, whether they're the stormwater in parks or the stormwater in stormwater and roads and drainage, that a lot of that process involves engineering work. And so, the expenditures will be moving a lot more quickly as the engineering work is complete and we're able to assign the work to contractors. Obviously, there is, a lot of work that, can be done in the stormwater area, as with all of our infrastructure. So we anticipate that moving very quickly once the engineering work is completed and we amend contracts as appropriate and bid out new contracts. Quite frankly, we're going to need to bring in probably additional contractors to perform this work. But that, of course, is an area in future ARP allocations that we can really look to invest in because there's significant need. So that's kind of an overview. Ms. McNabb, if you want to touch on any of the particulars, and Commissioner Rader, you and the committee can ask questions as we go or whatever you would prefer.
Yes, I think that the main thing I'd like to point out is that on any of the programs that are less than 50% expended, we're going to start reaching out to those departments and finding out exactly why those expenditures have been a little slow, and we'll be able to report that on our future reports.
And yes, I think that begins to flesh it in. I guess that, because this particular table is financially oriented, you do have some there is one column for a BOC action. It just may be useful to think in terms of moving it through the planning or being able to annotate its movement through the planning and legislative process, particularly, as it relates to, for instance, the Nehemiah Fund expenditure that you had referenced before. We do have a resolution that was involved in it. It just may also be useful to think about a format that can help us to understand the degree to which that particular project is fully representative of the entire commitment or whether it is partial. And so I'm just thinking that maybe as we work forward through this, that we can start to combine a little bit more of the narrative or the background notes with the specifics, and maybe break down if there are multiple expenditures out of care and concern, for instance, that we would break them into that. Likewise, as we go to the now that we're going to the individual commissioners in a more granular level, perhaps you could integrate that same sort of approach into some breakdowns for the countywide funds that you're expending. I think that the main thing that we're trying to accomplish with these reports is to better understand where there is capacity within the existing categorical commitments for new initiatives or new countywide efforts, rather than the commission exclusively focusing on the 1.5 million that they're working with. So sure. I think that that's what we're trying to get at. This is not intended to be entirely an academic exercise, but instead to give the commission more of a document that they can plan with and to work with as we receive multiple suggestions, both from constituents and as commissioners start to come to some consensus on an effort that they would like to offer to the administration and their colleagues as to a strategy that might merit countywide resources. So your response, Mr. Williams.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think Commissioner Rader, some of the key, I guess, questions that from what I'm hearing that we're seeking to provide a response to, the overarching one maybe is, are there opportunities for reallocation? Are there funds that are allocated and sitting in buckets, for lack of a better word, where because of the passage of time or circumstances, where we have come to a determination that that is no longer viable, desirable, or timely. And I think that we need to vet this with that in mind. Also, are there any hindrances that should be articulated that are not allowing us to expend funds? And they could be, operational hindrances, there could be timing things, or there could be circumstances with other agencies. So we can identify that in each of these. And then kind of a narrative for each project, I think, in terms of, okay, where are we? We've allocated, say, $250,000 for, the juvenile court program. Are we at the point where we've gotten things up and running and we're going to start spending? Or are we, doing an RFP or something like that? I'm thinking that's what you're looking for. Is that a fair statement, Commissioner?
Yes, more in that area to identify those opportunities.
Okay, and then I guess, right, so we can get to work on that. And a lot of it, I think we have, but we will try and find a format to put it in so that when we talk about the next allocation, it may be in the context of allocation / reallocation.
Okay. Yeah, I think that possibly could help. And again, I'm trying to make this available to the other commissioners. Members of the committee, do you have any comments on this particular framework or any areas where we can improve it?
Commissioner Terry has.
Commissioner Terry, yes, I will open the floor to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, appreciate the update on the spreadsheet. And I totally agree with the suggestion by Ms. McNabb, Dr. McNabb, to ask the departments, where they're at. Because I see the magistrate court has drawn down a significant amount of what was allocated, but then I see a couple other of the, the other kind of, I guess, not related to us in our work, but the other constitutionals that doesn't really seem to be pulled down a lot. But I think is that right that we gave this was like transferred in, I guess, their control back in September? Is that like, is that like they've got it in September, or what's sort of their?
Yeah, the money was, yes. The issue is not that the money was not made available. So yes, they have access to the funds. And okay. I think it was, as quickly as practical after the vote. Yeah.
Okay. So I think it makes sense for us just to check in with them, right? 9 months later.
Right. And that's where I learned, Commissioner Terry, very recently, there's a challenge with some of these where they just can't, people are not coming for the salaries that they're offering.
Yeah, I know. I understand. Hey, can I ask one quick question? Because I'm just curious how I think you referenced it, CO Williams, but when it comes to like some of the line items, like the public safety bonus, like I know those were sort of got right out the door, but I guess we just budgeted more than we actually ended up spending. And so are those, like, for that line item, does that mean that those bonuses will just be there and they will eventually be bonuses to like new police recruits? Or is the expectation that some of these line items will in essence be sort of, redone and go back kind of into maybe the general, or maybe reallocate somewhere else?
Well, so one of the things I was mentioning, I apologize, I think I have an echo. Yes, one of the things I was mentioning is I think it would be appropriate at this time to revisit a number of these line items that have had little to no expenditure, or if they've had little to no expenditure, for the past 6 months or something, we'll take a look to see, is it appropriate to reallocate? As it relates to those where we have budgeted and spent, because the bonuses or the incentives have been paid out for this year. So if there's funding still remaining in line items, we may be able to reallocate, assuming that it's all trued up, so assuming that it's all up to date.
Absolutely. And then just because it's on sort of our discussion for the ERPS committee, we definitely do want to get with, Chief Ramos and the Community Service Board to talk about the 1 million that was allocated for the mental health responder program. I know it's on the list, and so I wanted to help shepherd that along, because I do think it would really make a big impact on some of the things that we were talking about earlier today, and just in general. And I do know the Community Service Board, just through going to the meetings that I go to as a board member and representing the commission here, is that they also have ideas and sort of some kind of new kind of evolutions of the original responder program. But I know that $1 million is there, and I think that's one that we definitely don't want to be reallocated.
Absolutely.
Don't want to be, sit too long. I know it can really help out a lot of individuals. Thank you.
Thank you. So Commissioner Rader, or Mr. Chair, we will be happy, I guess, if we just keep this on, or, I don't know.
Yeah, let's bring it back. And again, it is intended to be, to be made useful for the commission to be able to deal with this stuff. So let's just bring it back again.
Thank you. Thank you. And it may not be that we have all 40 or 50 lines at the next one, but if we just keep it on, we can, each time we present, we'll be able to present. We'll do maybe in groupings or something.
Good.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and let's go now to the watershed. It's styled watershed debt refunding, but we now are kind of piling up several funding issues that we've been trying to get going, in addition to a focus on that the staff brought to us a couple of weeks ago on our debt management policy. We have several issues, I guess, that are really pending before us. One, obviously, is the prior 2011 watershed debt that remains eligible for refunding. There is also, we have a tax anticipation note that has been dedicated to funding our watershed system, an extraordinary commitment of tax funds for the support of an enterprise. And now we're coming up to the middle of the year, and we have not yet seen the public offering that the administration had planned to make in order to not only to pay down that TAN, but also to fund capital improvements over the next few years. So, I think it is appropriate that we look a little bit at this debt management policy, because it does not seem as though we are addressing some of these issues in a timely fashion. So first, is there anything to report on, the refunding of the 2011 watershed bonds at this point?
Mr. Chair, we are continuing to monitor the refunding at this point, and we're moving forward. We're meeting with the CEO tomorrow about our process and where we are in the process. We're, as is the case with all debt management, we constantly reevaluate it based on where the market is, where we think the market is going, et cetera. And at this point, we may, depending on if we move the timing of the new money issue for watershed, because we don't want to borrow the money before we need it. But we are going to need it during the second half of this year, probably fourth quarter. So our plan right now is to issue the bonds sometime in August or September. And then when we do that, at this point, we're getting so close to that date that we may go back to our original plan of refunding those bonds on a combined basis instead of separately, just depending upon where we go with our process tomorrow. But we should be able to report back to you on that.
Okay, so has the situation changed? Is private placement now more costly than a public offering under current conditions?
No, but we will continue to monitor that and do it at the same time as we do the public offering. What we will do is go through a cost benefit analysis, evaluating both options, take in consideration what the difference may be when we get by combining it versus issuing it separately. Where before there's absolutely no doubt that issuing using a private placement versus a public offering on a standalone basis, that will continue to be better priced on a private placement basis. But we'll need to do another analysis to determine whether the private placement done separately when we're doing the new money bonds at the same time, whether that makes sense. And I don't think that, I think diversification between the two approaches there's also an advantage to be had from that. So
is there any scenario is there any scenario by which we would be able to achieve the savings that we were offered towards the end of last year in any action this year?
I don't think so at this point.
No.
And that the loss of savings total, what, about $40 million? Is that right, in net present value?
I think the last time I saw it, it was a little over 30.
That was in April. 34 million in April.
Right, that's what I had said.
And I'm only assuming that, so that's net present value of that we have lost, and we don't see any chance of regaining. Is that correct?
No.
All right.
I don't expect rates to come back down to that level in the immediate future.
Okay. The second question I have, and I see Commissioner Cochran-Johnson's, are you wanting to speak to this, or do you have other line of question, Commissioner Cochran-Johnson?
Yes, I do want to speak to it. I'm looking back at my notes, and we had a resolution back from January 26th of 2022, a resolution authorizing the issuance of the sale of 70 million in tax anticipation, the note itself. And, I'm just confused as to why have we let this go so long? Because in all honesty, when we sit here and say, and I just don't understand, we lost 34 million in net present value. It's not getting any better. It isn't getting any better. And I'm just confused in asking because, Mr. Williams, we had the conversation probably 3 months ago, and, when you go away, you just don't come back. And I'm just wondering, because it's not getting better and we're just losing money here, taxpayer money. And at this point, we have a resolution, but we still have no action. Am I confused on what I'm saying, or am I actually accurate?
Yeah, I'm trying to follow, Commissioner. But
The resolution is for the tax anticipation notes.
Yeah, and we sold that debt.
which we did issue.
Okay.
But
And what we have discussed in the past is how we would move forward with potential for refunding or new issuance in Watershed. And it is, our take that the most appropriate, or we were believing, ultimately the CEO will make the decision, most appropriate approach would be a competitive process. And in order to do that, it takes, the time to develop the RFP and all of those mechanisms that go with it. So the fact that we did not have and do not currently have an FA, a financial advisor, that what we've been experiencing is the time it takes to, come up with what would a competitive process look like. And so those have been the discussions. But to Ms. McNabb's point, there may be, a current parent, and I don't know if a loss, it's tough to use the word loss because we didn't have, we didn't have a contract or we didn't have something specific. Although there was a proposal that was presented through, not through a competitive process or anything, but there was a proposal. But if we are to do a combined issuance, for example, in the next few months, there would, potentially over time, there would be opportunities to refinance. And Ms. McNabb is indicating that she is constantly watching for that. So I don't know that whatever the potential loss as being articulated right now, does that mean that's finite? I don't think that it would.
I don't know exactly what that meant, but
So just like we have in the past where we have reissued or we have refinanced, those opportunities will present themselves again in the future. We would all believe.
perhaps, but I don't think that we're going to see the rates that we had at the end of last year again for some time, if ever. And so that is money that's actually lost because we did not choose to refund the 2011 debt at that point. And, it's now water under the bridge and we'll now have to make a decision otherwise. But it appears to me that we were not prepared when the decision presented it to make an informed decision. And as a result, and as a consequence of rising rates, that opportunity is no longer available to us. Moreover, in February, when we made the extraordinary decision to temporarily fund Watershed's capital improvement program with tax recourse, tax anticipation notes, we were informed by both the Watershed Department and the administration that the public offering would occur in the second quarter. And now that is not going to occur. And in fact, we haven't even contracted a financial advisor in order to advise us on that process. But more importantly, I'm not sure that we have the situation in hand as it relates to our finances in order within Watershed, including things like collecting bad or old debt and reimposing a connection, being able to potentially disconnect water to pursue our claims, so that we would be prepared to be able to do so. So now we are continuing to spend money on capital improvements, and we're approving those contracts on an ongoing basis, but we're not refunding that Watershed capital fund that is going to be necessary for us to pay for it. And so that is of concern because now we're going towards the second half of the year where we will need resources for the operations of the government that we've typically in the past used tax anticipation notes to fund. And it appears that we've now we can't free that money up in the short term. So I am concerned that we're not implementing on a debt management plan in a timely fashion, and that we're starting to roll up debt that we don't have a long-term plan for financing. Is there any other debt that we are facing a need for borrowing, and what are the impediments to us undertaking that debt?
I'm not aware of any other impediments to the borrowing other than, making sure, well, we got to put all the pieces together. But I think that we're just about there.
Okay, but we don't, we are not prepared to do a public offering. And we don't yet have a financial advisor under contract. Is that right?
Correct. But we are in the process of that RFP. So we should be able to move that forward pretty quickly.
Other questions on the situation? Commissioner Cochran-Johnson.
Yes, I just wanted to go back because of something that Mr. Williams said. He said we do not have a financial advisor. He indicated that a proposal has been presented, but it was not through a competitive process. And I wanted to visit that because, Mr. Williams, are we held up, so to speak, awaiting the selection of a financial advisor to provide guidance in order for us to move forward? Because I think that's what I'm hearing, but I want you to verify that I hear what I'm hearing, or am I confused?
So, Commissioner, yes, it's certainly, in my estimation, we do need a financial advisor to help us with, the placement, and the management, quite frankly, of future debt issuance, and especially as we move forward looking to finance the consent decree. And so it is my opinion that over the next several years, having a financial advisor in place will help us to, issue multiple issuances of debt, which will be necessary in order to finance the consent decree.
Okay.
And there may be a host of other, quite frankly, Commissioner, and a lot of this conversation, a financial advisor tends to revolve around water and sewer, but there's a lot of other capital and infrastructure needs that may be appropriate where we could get guidance from a financial advisor. So I think we need one, yes.
Yeah, and because we haven't really needed one in the up until just now, because we haven't been issuing a lot of debt. But we're trying to get that on board, someone on board before we move forward with our long-term issue.
Understood. So understanding and being clear on your statement, Mr. Williams, is there an RFP that's gone out? Because you clearly state that someone offered themselves up, but you didn't take advantage of the offerer.
Right. So that RFP, Commissioner, Ms. McNabb, myself, Ms. Horner have literally, just put the final touches on over the past week. We anticipate meeting with the CEO in the next day or so to present our thoughts, and ultimately it will be his decision. But that, the work of developing the RFP has just concluded.
All right. So other questions from commissioners? Because I'd like to move on. You will remember that 2 weeks ago, we had a presentation from staff on the financial or on the debt management policy. I'd like them to review that. And then I asked them to present some proposals for amendments to that policy to address some of the weaknesses or opportunities that lie in it. So Dr. Obang and staff, could you please refresh us on what y'all had found in the review and then present to us, any recommendations that you have for amending that policy?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. John Manson, Central Staff Senior Policy Analyst. As the Commissioner stated, a couple of weeks ago, staff was directed to review the Watershed refinancing process and review the debt management policy. There are 2 memos in your agenda packet today. The first memo is our first memo that reviewed the debt management policy process.
And you want to bring that up so people can see some of the words? I mean, this is complex stuff, so it might be helpful as you refer to particular sections to allow people to review them.
Yes, sir. Hold on one second. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
I can.
This is our first memo. It was a review of the situation that we were in regarding our refinancing our watershed debt. We put this out a couple of weeks ago. From that conversation, it was recommended that we review the debt management policy and provide recommendations for a more stringent policy that allows for more input by the Board of Commissioners. That would be our second memo. An update to that memo was sent this afternoon at 3:05. It's on page 31 of your agenda packet, but the updated memo came second. So let me pull that one up. This is our second memo with our recommended policy amendments.
Okay, so let's go over those because I don't think we've seen those yet.
Yes, sir. This is a new memo. Our first recommended change is for the Board of Commissioners to be included in the evaluation committee for the selection of a financial services provider. We suggested that this be added in section M of the current debt management policy. Our second recommendation.
All right, so let me just ask you a question about that. And the reason that the Board of Commissioners would be included is because we are a client of the financial advisor. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
And-
this does have some precedent insofar as we have, when PFM was our financial advisor, our contract specified that they would be accountable to both the Board of Commissioners and the administration. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so Commissioners, are there any questions about the notion that the FA is of service to both the administration and the Board of Commissioners, and that so the Board of Commissioners should have some role in selecting the FA? Okay, proceed.
I'm sorry, it gives me no bellyache. In all honesty, I know for the most part, this is a function of the chief executive officer, but it's moving, slowly. And I have I make no qualms with doing whatever is necessary. Because of course, at the end of the day, we have to vote on and approve the budget. So I'm reading now the red lines. I do apologize if this was sent to me because I've not read it.
Yeah, I'm gonna need some more time too.
Okay. And this is a moving target, certainly. The Org Act provides
Yes.
that the Board of Commissioners is responsible for authorizing debt. So that is a role of the board. And obviously, we also are responsible for raising the revenues necessary to service that debt, whether they are through tax funds or through the rate structure of a utility that we operate. So notwithstanding the administration's role in the complex process of managing our debt, nevertheless, the Board of Commissioners is directly online for these decisions and their implications for our ratepayers and taxpayers.
Absolutely. And I did get this earlier. I just haven't honestly had the opportunity to read through it as I should.
Okay.
And I agree wholeheartedly because at the end of the day, we have the responsibility of voting. So I take no issue with being a part of the process. But I cannot say that I wrapped my mind around it to the point that I pulled the trigger on it at this moment. And that's just where I am.
Yeah, well, let's go ahead and walk our way through the thing, and then we can decide what to do at the end of the review.
Okay.
Mr. Manson.
Yes, sir. Our second staff recommendation was to request that the administration review with the Board of Commissioners any potential refinancing of existing debt via memo and recommendation, and that it be discussed in the FAB Committee. We ask that an additional section be added to the current policy that details this and ask for a biannual review that takes place in the FAB committee. As a part of this biannual review, the chief financial officer or finance director would report on the maturity and eligibility of any debt that the county may have at that time for refinancing, and as well as give it 30 days advance notice for refinancing, any refinancing of debt within the county.
Okay, so there are two elements, are a biannual review, and is that meant to be every 2 years or every twice a year?
Twice a year.
So I believe that's semi-annual.
Yeah.
I also would encourage you to work with perhaps the law office to standardize the language. Anything that says the Board of Commissioners would like something probably doesn't, meet the standard of legally drawn policy. So we would want to make sure that this is not unambiguous or is not ambiguous and, is clear as to the responsibilities involved.
Yes, sir.
And I see your hand, Mr. Williams. Let him walk through it and then I'll let you respond.
Thank you.
And then the final portion of the memo were recommendations that staff got from CFO McNabb. We need to continue to work through these recommendations, and we would suggest that all recommendations be reviewed by the FAB committee and the law department before being instituted.
And if I can just summarize, the recommendations that I had made are really just some cleanup items. We need to add a definition for WIFIA. The private placement definition or direct placement definition was not quite what it needed to be. I'm recommending that the present value savings, where we talk about what our minimum targeted savings are, I would recommend that we raise that from 3% to 5%. I think that's what most governments use as a 5% threshold. On the refunding that we're looking at is significantly higher than 5% because we were waiting for the call date. And then I've just made some cleanup items, for example, on the private placement definition, and then added the treasurer to one section.
So thank you for that input. Are there any other comments that we'd like to get from the members of the commission on this time, at this point in time? Commissioner Cochran-Johnson.
Yes, I wanted to say, sitting here and having the opportunity to review it, and all we're adding is the red line. I am in total agreement with Ms. McNabb as our financial officer for the suggestions that she's made. I don't see anything here that causes alarm. I do believe that this needs to be semi-annual, and I think it would be good policy for us to be made abreast on a semi-annual basis of any debt and the status thereof. So honestly, it's not much to wrap your mind around. It's just a few sentences. So I take no issue with it and with moving forward with the document as it's been presented.
Okay, could you roll back up, Mr. Manson, to the part about the engagement of the financial advisor?
Mm-hmm.
So,
And yes, and for me, I've been in politics a long time, and so what looks simple may not be. So that's why I want to review what may be listed so I can make a better decision. I just saw this today.
Yeah.
So that's why I need more time.
okay. And I'd like to go a little bit further into the red in the middle of that first page. One of the things that I think that we are suffering from is the fact that we have not maintained a relationship with a financial advisor. And so therefore, both at the end of last year when rates were very low and the opportunities were very high, we apparently did not believe that we could execute. And we as a board and administration, us together as a governing authority, apparently did not have sufficient understanding that the capital markets were advantageous and that we should move rapidly to refund the 2011 debt. And thus, we have now lost that opportunity. So one of the things that is suggested in that second paragraph is that a financial advisor be maintained at all times by the county, and those services be available both to the administration and the Board of Commissioners FAB Committee, so that they will have the resources necessary to be able to respond intelligently to a complex area of public finance. Also, the notion that we would have a local financial advisor, someone that we could consult with on a localized basis and not rely upon someone that is interested only in facilitating transactions when we are issuing debt, but instead an advisor that can consult with the board and the administration on an ongoing basis to identify issues that perhaps we weren't aware of or that we should position ourselves for in order to ensure that we are as efficient as possible in using the debt mechanism for public purpose. So that, I think, is an important area of addition. The review of both the policy as well as refunding and other financial opportunities within the year, perhaps including, although it doesn't need to say this in here, the use of tax anticipation notes. You know, sometimes we've had them, sometimes we haven't. It's almost been a mystery. We've been in the past few years, I remember when it was suggested to us that we would be issuing TANs, and then somehow we were able to squeak by without having TANs. Well, Commissioner Johnson, you will remember back in 2010 when we were caught up with a big surprise because we didn't used to issue tax anticipation notes. And then we found that there was, some undertakings that the county made using, trying to stretch that money that ultimately undermined our financial, our bond rating. And those were very, urgent times for us. And so, at that point in time, I had no idea that a TAN was a mechanism that was available and that, I should be looking for its exercise during these lean months, but certainly got a big education on it when we lost our bond rating at that point. So what I'm suggesting is that, the advisor can help us to be more knowledgeable. I always tell people that when you're a county commissioner, you need to be a mile wide and a mile deep. And so this will at least help us to deepen our understanding of some of these areas. So that's another area I'm going to advocate for. So I understand that we probably all need to take another look at this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask staff to work with me to reduce this in the form of a resolution to amend the debt management policy that I will introduce at our next committee of the whole meeting. And then at our next FAB meeting, we can potentially have a little bit more in-depth discussion of it. Particularly should we be in a position to where, we need to make decisions on debt, perhaps we can move a little bit more quickly and with, more certainty in that direction. So other questions from the commissioners. I know that this is kind of arcane type of stuff, but at the same time, I was just very impressed that the amount of money that sort of evaporated between the end of last year and today when it came to the savings from this refunding. And it just really brought to mind to me the need that we have to be on top of this stuff. I mean, what it appears that we have foregone in savings on the 2011 debt appears to be in excess of what we saved by using the WIFIA facility to fund, that major tranche. And we were very proud of doing that. But what I didn't realize is that there was other money that was sitting on the table that's now not there anymore. So I want to make sure that we don't get caught like that again. And so that's why I'd like us to work on this for the near future. Are there any other questions, comments? All right, so Mr. Manson, if you would work to get this into the form of a resolution to amend the debt management policy, and then I also would appreciate any further input on the item. And I'll look forward to introducing it at the next committee of the whole.
Yes, sir.
All right, is there any other business that needs to come before us? For the first time in several meetings, I think that we will be able to adjourn the FAB meeting a little bit before 5 p.m. So if there's no further business, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further? Oh, Commissioner Johnson. Oh, you just want to vote. Okay. All in favor, say aye. There you go. Thank you.